with another episode of Rising Tide. The purpose of Rising Tide is to educate, heal, and empower by bringing on the world's most brilliant minds and purest souls. So I am extremely grateful to have a Rising Tide with us today by the name of Precious Price. And I'm still trying to get in the habit of like these podcasts where it's just us. I just be in my mind, it's like a live audience or something. So I'll be expecting people to like clap. And when I introduce somebody and it just be silent, I'll be like,
yeah, no, I'll clap for myself. Yes, Precious Price.
There we go. All right, so Precious Price is a brand strategist and a LinkedIn coach who helps corporate professionals better communicate the value of their brand through overcoming the objection with LinkedIn and positioning themselves as an expert in their industry. Having been in the branding space for nearly 7 years, Precious educates her audience of students, professionals, and entrepreneurs through various avenues such as one-on-one coaching, workshop facilitation, online content, and her podcast, The Brand Strategy Behind Branding Yourself. So that's Precious Price. And I actually want to just give you the floor now and just give a little bit more detail in who you are, what you do, how you got into what you do, things like that.
Absolutely. So again, as stated, my name is Precious Price. I have been in the branding space for a while. So many people, or what you would typically know me as, is a brand strategist. I help people to better communicate the value of their brand through developing a comprehensive and cohesive brand strategy that not only encompasses their professional brand, but also their personal brand, because I feel like both of those are really important, and you shouldn't necessarily have to compromise a piece of yourself when you are trying to introduce and pretty much showcase the value of what you bring to the table to other people. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do. But once you get to know me, you'll find out that I do a ton or way more, honestly. So my podcast was mentioned. My podcast is called The Strategy Behind Branding Yourself. That podcast has been going on. Our show has been going on for, wow, oh my gosh, almost 2 years. Almost
Wow.
2 years. So
how frequently do y'all release episodes?
So we go through seasons. So during the season, we release episodes weekly, but then on off seasons, obviously we are not releasing anything. So we just kicked off season 3 about 4 or 5 weeks ago, actually. So season 3 will run from around September through the end of November. And yeah, we're good. Wow. We're going, just getting it popping. So that's how I do that. And a lot of it is also through speaking. I speak a ton, whether it's panels, keynotes, doing workshops over the topics like LinkedIn and brand strategy as well. So I have been doing that and have been a public speaker now for, I would say, since back in 2014 or 2015 is when I started. So even that has been a while, and it's wild me saying it and saying 2015 and it's 2020, knocking on 2021. I'm feeling a little old, but yeah, that's where we at.
So you had started doing these things, what, in like college or before college or?
Yes. So a lot of the things that I'm doing now, I actually started back when I was in undergrad. I went to Indiana University. I was in the School of Business, majoring in marketing and tech management. And during that time, it's like,
what year did you go there?
I went there from 2013 to 2017, and then I got my master's. And I graduated with that in 2018.
Oh, okay. Are you Greek?
I am, yes.
What are you? Yeah, that's okay. I'm a Kappa from Ball State.
Okay. Oh, what?
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, we'll do that offline. Okay. But you started speaking at IU and everything. So what, you were doing that at just like a lot of different organizations, or you were speaking at other schools, or what kind of...
Yeah, so when I actually started speaking, so it was during my undergrad, like I already said, and it was more so 2 different campus organizations is how it started, right? So when I was at IU, I was involved in a ton of different stuff between the School of Business, the admissions office, the diversity office. I had my hands in a bunch of different things. So at that point, when I started to get, I would say, leadership positions, that is when the speaking started, because I then started to lead those meetings. But then once people started to figure out my story, I guess, because when I was in Kelly, I was actually one of what they called, like, I sat on a student advisory board for the School of Business, but then I also was a Kelly guide, which is pretty much you take students and parents around the campus, around Kelly, tell them your story, and then you're pretty much giving them a presentation on what the experience is like being a student at Kelly. So I did that a lot. And then I also did that with IU as like a campus for their diversity program. And that's pretty much how it started. From there, when people began to figure out, like, I guess it's something, a lot of people cling to my story because I am first gen. I'm the oldest of 5. I'm from Chicago. So there's this, I guess, this piece of resiliency to my story that a lot of people tend to cling to. And at that point, when I started to speak around campus regarding that, other organizations outside of campus, like for instance, when recruiters would come or people from Indianapolis would come down and I'm at networking dinners and stuff, they'd find out about me speaking and just everything that I'm doing. And then they would then ask me to speak as well. So I've spoken in Indianapolis as well. I came down here to Atlanta, hit the ground running. And since then, it's been absolutely like dope because I love the fact that I now get paid to speak because a lot of people don't know I grew up with a stutter. So I never thought I would be able to like be a speaker as much as I love talking.
Do you remember the moment where that identity shifted for you? Because I'm sure you probably identified as being a non-speaker when you are heavily associated with the stutter issue. But then now that you're a full-time speaker and that's really what you're known for and that's your whole identity, like, do you remember the moment where that shifted for you?
I wouldn't even say it was like a snap moment like that. It was kind of like it was over a period of time that shift occurred. I remember when the shift started though. So the shift started for me when I was actually asked to keynote, I believe, what was it? It's like I've always, so if I can explain this correctly, I've always had imposter syndrome. I'm sure you know what imposter syndrome is, right? Like it's pretty much feeling like, okay, I don't necessarily belong to be in the spaces and in the roles that I have acquired. I feel like at some point somebody's going to figure out I'm some type of fraud and then I'm no longer going to be where I am. And I struggled with that. I struggled heavily in college with that because even going off to college, and it's like, until I actually walked across that stage and started crying, that is when I was like, oh, damn, like I'm actually a college graduate now. I never identified as that. So even with the speaking and kind of looking at that shift of when I started to see or view myself as a speaker versus someone who grew up with a speech impediment, I would say that started, it wasn't until that full shift occurred where I was just like, okay, the light bulb went off when I was asked to keynote the end of the year banquet for the School of Business. So the year that I was graduating, I was actually asked to be the keynote for the student banquet, and I was actually receiving an award, which I didn't know at the time, but I was actually receiving an award. It was crazy because it just came all full circle, and I'm up there and I started my keynote, and like, at this point, this is a culmination of just like, I'm about to graduate. Like I'm the first person in my family about to receive this degree. It was just a lot of emotions. So I remember halfway, not even halfway, at the beginning of my keynote, they gave me my award first. And they, you know how when you get an award, they'll like start describing the person and all the achievements that they've had and all they've done. And I don't know, so many emotions just rushed over me. Either way, we had to like pause my keynote. I was in the bathroom crying for like 15, 20 minutes. Like I could not stop crying. I was sobbing. If you go on my website under, I believe, which page? Is it speaker or like reviews? One of the two, you will see that picture of me from that banquet, literally like hugging one of my advisors crying. And that was before I then had to get on stage and still deliver my keynote.
That had to be a heartfelt moment because this happened in front of everybody, right?
Exactly. It happened in front of everybody who pretty much had been there, right? Because for me, college was really the turning point in my life. So like I said, I'm originally from Chicago, and then before I started high school, my parents actually moved us, so me and my four younger siblings, to Maryville, Indiana. So then that's when I then transitioned into what they call the region area of Indiana, Northwest Indiana. And it was just like, even up until that point of us moving to Maryville, I never saw I guess, what I wanted to become, right? Like, I had all of these ideas of who I wanted to be in my head. I had all of these ideas of like, okay, when I turn 25, this is who I am. This is what I want. But I never actually saw that. For me, what I would see is it's like, all of my family is really young. My mom had me when she was 15. Her mother had her when she was about 14 or 15. So it's just a lot of generational, for lack of better terms, baggage that I had carried and that I thought that I would be susceptible to, until I actually reached that point of, wow, I have now successfully graduated college. Because there have been people in my family who may have tried to start school, they didn't finish, or they've gone off, had to come right back because of something happened. It was all of those things. So a culmination of all of that was just, yeah, it was really
So
overwhelming.
how does it feel to be a bloodline breaker?
Oh, it's honestly a heavy responsibility. I'm not going to lie to you. And I was just talking to my mom about this last week, because me and my mother are finally at the point where, and I feel like you might understand this, right? Like, everybody, Black moms, right? You can't necessarily critique Black moms, because then it's like, wait, you trying to call me a bad mother? What's going on? So
I'll sacrifice everything for you.
Exactly. So me and my mother are finally at a point where we can openly discuss and talk about how she raised me, how her and my dad raised me, or just my upbringing in general, without feelings being hurt and without someone thinking that it's like with malicious intent, if that makes sense. So we're finally at that point, and I was actually discussing with my mom last week, because she's also, in a different way, she also broke generational like curses too, right? She also did that, but now I'm doing it in a different way. And we were just kind of exchanging a sentiment, because my mom's only 40 years old. We were exchanging a sentiment that, like, it's tiring. It's tiring to be that person that feels like, because you put the weight on you. It's like everybody puts the weight on you, but then you put the weight on you too, because you're like, well, I gotta break all of the generational, like you feel like it has to all stop with you. And that's not necessarily the case. The way that my mom put it, she was like, well, I came this far so that you can start a little bit ahead of me, and now you're going so far, and you don't have to go to the finish line. You're pretty much just like passing the baton. Yeah. Exactly. So it's like, don't feel like you have to sprint all the way to the end and it's all on you. And now you are giving yourself anxiety. You're worrying yourself to death just to try to like help us, when it's like, by helping you, you're helping us in the first place. So make sure that you're just, you 110% yourself. So yeah, that's where we've been at.
That's what's up though. And I appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability, and just to be transparent and vulnerable myself, so you're not just, metaphorically speaking, naked out here all alone. I remember with me and my dad, I was trying to have a conversation with him. This happened when I was particularly 16, and somebody was like, just write out a list of everything he did that made you feel some type of way, and then just like address it, right? Yeah. So I remember going over there and just reading off my list, and it just didn't go well, but as a 31-year-old man now, who I would like to say I have a mature mind, and reflecting on it, it's like anybody who is just fired off a whole list of things that a person has done wrong, naturally defense mechanisms is going to kick in, and it's like, I've invested, a lot of schooling, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money in the therapists, hypnotherapists, all these other different type of things into like emotionally healing and elevating. I can't expect, that of him. He didn't grow up around that. Like,
exactly.
And a real thing that made me kind of shift my thinking a little bit was like, so just understanding the history, like my dad was a kid at one point in time. And it's like what he saw, unfortunately, my granddad, I actually only met him one time, my dad's dad, one time in my entire life. Like my dad introduced me to him at an aunt's wedding when he was 10. When I was 10, he walked up, said, nice to meet you, walked off, never seen him again. I had never seen him before that either. But so my dad didn't see his dad at all growing up. You know, he gave my grandma 6 kids, dipped out. So financially, that was always the pain in the house. My grandma struggling, you know, to pay bills. So in his mind growing up, yo, if I make sure that financially they straight,
then that's all I gotta do.
Yeah, I'm an amazing dad. But it's like, but they didn't know the emotional side of things. And I can't fault him for that because, you know, we only know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And unfortunately, what we know is only based upon our mental Rolodex of experiences. If we haven't physically experienced it, watched somebody close to us experience it, seen it on like a movie or social media or the internet or something like that, we don't got it in our mind to reference to. So I remember this probably was like 3 years ago. I had tried a different approach. So from 16 until like 28, I never had another conversation with my dad about that at all. Like we just didn't even go there. So I was going through my process and some told me to try a different approach. So I remember I reached out to my dad, and instead of just with my list, like, yo, you did all this stuff, I was like, I asked him a question. I'm like, do you think I harbor negative feelings towards you? And he was like, you know, I don't think you harbor negative feelings, but I think, you know, you probably just think I could have been a better dad. And I'm like, man, I just want you to know that I feel like you was the best dad you know how to be. And I just explained everything that I just explained to you about, you know, what he's seen growing up, his dad and all the other stuff. And my dad sat there for a minute and choked up. And he was like, man, I can't even describe just hearing that, what that does to me and what that makes me feel. Literally right after that, he was like, man, you know what, son? I'm sorry, man. I could have been there for you. I could have did this more. Literally everything that was on my list, he naturally just came out and just said. But before, if I was coming out, I'm like, yo, you did this, yo. So it was like.
So the approach.
Yes. That's what I've learned in my experience. It's always just the approach, because just even thinking about myself, I feel like I'm extremely self-controlled. But if somebody just comes at, like, if you come at me aggressive, then a lot of times, you know, my self-control goes away. And then I can get, so I'm like, I can understand that, all right, well, how do I want somebody to come to me? Don't accuse me of anything. Just ask me. Tony Robbins, and I'm sorry for taking over. This is really supposed to be you speaking. Tony Robbins has said, if I tell you, you can doubt it. But if I ask you and you tell me, you got to own it. So it's like, so now I'm done talking. So I just wanted to, so you wasn't just vulnerable out there by yourself. We've both been, you know, transparent, vulnerable and all that stuff. So we in this together. So yes, you're speaking, and I'm proud of you for being a bloodline breaker.
Absolutely.
So you graduate from school. Did you know what you wanted to do when you actually graduated, or?
Yeah. I've always been that type A person. That type A person of like, I need to know where I'm heading. I need to know the end goal. I need to know the destination. So when I graduated undergrad, at least when I graduated undergrad, as stated, I had a degree in business marketing and technology management. So I knew that I wanted, in some way or fashion, wanted to go into marketing all throughout my
That was a dual
career.
major, or was that all in one major?
It was it's like a dual major, but in the School of Business at IU, they call it a major and a co-major. So they coupled well together so that they integrate pretty good with your coursework and stuff. So that's what I did. So that's what I did there. And I honestly, like, I chose tech because I knew that it was, I'm not even going to say on the rise. Like, tech has been on the rise, people say, like, for years now. But I knew that tech would open doors for me that other disciplines didn't necessarily, like, they wouldn't do that. And then even with marketing, it's just like looking at marketing, when you look at all of the fields of business, right, between accounting, finance, like technology, all of these pieces, marketing is really the one at times that kind of gets put on the bottom. And I didn't necessarily want to, like, I knew when I graduated that I wanted a really, really good return on the last 4 years of hell that I had just put myself through. So I knew that I wanted to graduate with a certain amount, making a certain amount of money with a certain type of job. So at that point, I had actually, when I graduated, received, I believe 3 or 4 full-time offers, 3 or 4 offers for employment. But none of those were the like the salary that I was necessarily looking for. I really wanted a competitive salary. And I felt like those weren't necessarily as competitive as they could be. Like, it was good. And granted, like, maybe some people who are listening right now may say, okay, maybe you should have been grateful, because most of those jobs they were offering me between, I would say, 53 to maybe 62,000. And to me, it's like, okay, that's good, right? But
You're saying right out of college.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what?
But I knew I could do so much better. Like, I knew the experience that I had. Like, and when I was in college, I was doing job shadows in Atlanta. I did an internship in Cleveland. I did one in New York City. Like, I did all of these things. So to me, I was like, no, I'm not just going to take what I was given. And then on top of that, when I was
so let
in
me
Kelly,
ask you, and what you're saying, like, so as you're doing all these intern things and getting exposure to all these, so were you aware of the specific job that was paying the specific amount that you were looking for? So you didn't even know it exists. You were just standing on, like, it's something more out there for me.
It's something more. Exactly. I'm like, this can't be it, because again, I had the internship experiences, right? I remember my very first internship, the very first one. It was in Cleveland, Ohio. I was a sales rep for United Technologies, which is the parent company of Otis Elevators. So I was working for Otis Elevators. Can you imagine what it's like to be a sales rep for elevators? For elevators?
What's the ticket on an elevator? I'm curious. How much was it?
I mean, because so Otis actually serves residential buildings and like the commercial buildings, right? So it's different between like residential and commercial. Honestly, it's been so many years and I hated that internship so much that I can't even recall what the price is. But I just knew I didn't want any part of it.
Like, was it 4 or 5 figures or?
For residential, it was 4. And then once you get into the commercial buildings, it's like five figure and up. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
But yeah, so I did not enjoy that. But at that point, I knew like all of these experiences, right? The internship in Cleveland, the internship in New York City, the job shadow, the externship that I did in Atlanta, like all of these different pieces started to show me very early on, okay, I know I don't want to do that. I know I don't want that. Like, that is the piece that I don't want. I feel like that's an aspect that a lot of people forget, right? Is the more that you understand what you don't like, the closer you are to understanding what you do. And I knew that, like, that was something that was explained to me very early on. So I knew, okay, even though I don't like this right now, I'm not just going to quit. Like, I'm going to stick it out, really reflect on this experience to say, okay, what was it about all of this that I did not like? Okay, I didn't like the team dynamic, specifically at that internship, the one in Cleveland. Like, I didn't like how they talked to each other in the office. I didn't like cubicle life. That's one thing I realized too. So I'm like, I can't do that. When I went to New York City, I was then interning with Nielsen, and I was like a global services intern, which is pretty much working with the different brands like Colgate, all of these different brands that we have to pretty much understand the analytics behind who's buying that type of stuff, who's watching certain things, all of that. And that was cool too. I realized, okay, I really have a knack for data, but I still don't like this behind the computer shit. Like, this is not it. Like, going to the same desk every single day was something that I knew that I could not do in my own career. And I also knew, I want to mention starting out as well, that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. I've always seen my mother as an entrepreneur. She's always had her own business for herself. She's went through wholesaling. She's went through having a natural hair company. She now owns a hair salon out in Maryville, Indiana, still owns her natural hair company, sells weave, sells all of this stuff, right? So I've always seen her in this hustle mode, working for herself and being able to thoroughly
And she's been a full-time entrepreneur your whole life?
Exactly.
Oh,
she tried her stint in nursing school. She did try her stint in nursing school. It did not last. I think once she got to like trigonometry or something, because I remember being in high school and her trying to get me to help her. And it's like, no.
Hey, some of them classes will do that. One class will make you be like, that major, I'm good.
Exactly. But what she understood what was for her is like, she wanted to try it. And she's like, okay, this isn't necessarily something that I need. She works a lot better with her hands. She's a very tactical, like, she executes. So she needed something in that aspect. So all of my internships kind of showed me everything of, okay, what I don't like. Now when I get to senior year and I'm like, okay, I'm getting these offers, but I'm not satisfied. This is not it. As a Black woman in tech, I know I can get more. Like, y'all are paying all of these people X amount of dollars. Y'all are paying these white men so much money, and they have less experience than me. I know I can get more. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I can do one of two things. I can choose one of these offers and I can settle. And I can, like, going into it, I knew that I wasn't going to be satisfied. I'm not going to say that I wasn't going to be happy. I could make myself happy in those situations, like in those jobs, but I wasn't going to be satisfied. I knew that I was going to feel like something was missing. So I'm like, I could do that. I could settle. I could just say, you know what? This is good enough. Most people who are my color come from where I'm from. They don't even make this much. Like, at that point, the offers that I was receiving, you know, I was making more than 95% of people in my family. Like, because most of my family, they're working short-term jobs. They're working, you know, your Walmarts. They're working these jobs that is just like, really, they're supposed to be temporary, but they're working them for their life. So I could have been like, okay, I'm just going to be satisfied because I should be grateful. But I said, no, I'm not going to do that. To me, it's like, I've always been a person I'm going to relentlessly go after what I want. Relentlessly. Like, if I can't stop thinking about it, that means that I need to act on it. That's always what I think about. And I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that if I accept this offer, okay, yeah, I'm making decent money, but I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to constantly be thinking about, okay, are they paying this, you know, man that's my manager, not my manager, but are they paying this white guy who's in the same position as me? Are they paying him more? And the answer would have been likely. So at that point, I did go back and I tried to negotiate one of the salaries that I did want, right? I really wanted the job, but I'm like, I need more than what you're offering. And they weren't willing to do that. So at that point is when I decided to then do an extra year and get my master's in information systems. And the MSIS program at Kelly, specifically at Indiana University, it's known as a consulting finishing school. And during my senior year, when I realized, okay, these offers ain't adding up. This is not what I want. And I said, what field is going to give me what I want? And I realized it was consulting. I would always see the consulting firms like EY, Deloitte, Accenture. I would always see them in the hallways during information sessions on campus, but I never really, I never went up, I never applied for real, any of that, because I felt like, okay, I'm not in, I don't know what consulting is. Who really comes to college knowing what consulting is unless your parents do that? And like I said, my parents, they brought me as far as they could bring me. They didn't go to my college, even applying the application process. I did a lot of that myself because they just didn't know how. And again, you can't fault them. They brought you as far as they could bring you. And now it's just time for you to kind of do that on your own. And that's what I realized. So I started to do that. And that it was at that point that I then said, okay, I'm going to stay another year and do the MSIS program, but now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to start seeking out consulting firms for where I want to work, because I then realized that they were starting out at least 70. And I didn't, even without a master's, I didn't need that. And I think back now, and sometimes I say, it's like, I got the master's for me. I didn't get it for my career or anything like that. It was more so, again, speaking to this imposter syndrome, feeling like, okay, as I am right now, I'm not good enough for consulting. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this enough, when I went through the same classes that everybody else went through.
So does that imposter syndrome kind of helps you out in a sense, where it kind of drives you to keep getting better in it?
I would say it's more of a con than a pro, because it drives you to constantly think about what more do I need to be doing rather than appreciating what you've already done. And I have a really bad problem with that, because at that point, it leads to burnout.
Appreciating. That's true. That's a very fact. Overthinking will for sure cause that. Well, I want to give you some appreciation now, because you avoided, in my experience, now I've been removed from college probably 8 years at this point. But what I see, I'm a keen observer, and what I see a lot of times is people don't necessarily think about, or they don't even prepare us to think about, how is this degree that I'm getting associated or connected to what I want to do with my life and what I plan to be doing once I leave here. So a lot of times people just be like, oh, you know, I want to get in whatever industry. Then they go get the major, find the first job that's going to hire them for that degree. And then, like you said, I hate it here. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to do this job every single day. I don't want to just go to this office and do this. Like, so I want to commend you for knowing what you actually wanted, knowing yourself enough. Yep, we can do that. And we back. So I wanted to give you your flowers for just knowing what you wanted, knowing what was possible, doing what you had to do to get exposure, and then also being prepared to receive what you want. Because I was reading Napoleon Hill, and he said there's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, I want to, you know, make at least $70,000, but are you really prepared to receive it? Do you really have all the skills? Are you taking life as serious as you need to? So I really want to commend you, especially like at that age where you're talking about thinking these things before you're even a senior, like year. Man, my mind, I've always been a learner, but I wasn't focused at all. I would be what they qualified as like a drifter, you know, where it's like zigzag and I'm over here and I'm over here and I wasn't focused at all. Like now, you know, again, 31 years old, I know what I want. I know where I'm headed and all that. But man, if I would have knew it at, so your senior year, what, you're like 22 maybe or something?
No. So the piece that I left out as well is so when I moved to Maryville, I actually hated it. And I ended up graduating high school in 3 years instead of 4. So I went off to IU early, and I was 17 when I started. So my senior year, I was actually 21.
So let me ask, because now I'm extremely curious, like what contributed to like the psychology of it all? Like, because like you said, where you came from, now your mom was an entrepreneur and everything like that. So maybe that played a lot into it, but where did the psychology come from, especially at that particular age, where even going before, where you're like, I'm graduating college or I'm graduating high school early, like where did that whole psychology or mindset come from?
Honestly, I would have to credit that to my mother. And when I say I have to credit it to my mother, it's good, and I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's good and it's developmental. So in the aspect of like, it's
That's
good.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's good because she poured a lot into us. Like, she knew that there were certain things that she wasn't necessarily afforded or she was able to complete because she got pregnant with me so young. So at that point, she made it her mission to make sure that I did not fall victim to the same thing. So I say that's good because it's an aspect of she really had a hand in the way that I grew up, in the way that I like, in the woman that I became. Now I say that it's more so like developmental because it's also the aspect of this fear that she had culminated into it affected our relationship growing up negatively, right? And I feel like you may understand that coming from like just hearing the story that you had with your father of just like that son and that dad, and you know, you get to your teen years and you finally are like understanding everything that was going on when you were a kid, and you're just like, what the hell were you doing?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it was for me. So with my mom, it's like, it was always a matter of, I remember being in maybe like elementary school, middle school, and I would come home and, you know, like as kids, you want friends, you want people to like you and all of that. And that's what I wanted. And I remember when we moved to Maryville, I'm just like, oh, I just feel like I don't have any friends here. Like you took me away from all of my friends. I go to school. It's just like, I hate it here, all of that. And she's like, you're not at school to make friends. You're at school to get your degree. And that's it. Like, you don't need any friends. And that's pretty much how, like, that was ingrained into not only my mental, but the mental of my siblings as well.
To be like result focused.
result focused, but then also to do everything ourselves. And that's why I say it's not always good, because I'm at the age now, like I'm knocking on 25. I'll be 25 in March. And I'm at the age now where it's like, I understand, no, you can't just go through life saying, I don't need any friends. You can't just go through life saying like, okay, I don't need anybody. I'm just focused on my goals. Like everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs someone to talk to, someone to vent to, like all of these different pieces. And because it was so ingrained in me to like, okay, I'm going to put relationships and friendships on the back burner. Like what I care about right now is my career and my degree. And that's all I cared about. When really it's like, these are some of my best years. These are some of my best years. And I find myself even now still spending them working endlessly, hours upon hours, just trying to get to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. And this goes back to what I said previously of not looking back and appreciating everything that I've done. Because I've already mentioned a bunch to you right now, right? And to a lot of people, when I mention this, they're like, oh my God. And I'm sitting here and I'm mentioning it as if it's everyday regular things and regular things that people are doing, and it's not. And I'm starting to realize even now that the way that I even grew up, the experiences that I went through, the shit is not normal. It's not.
Have you ever read The Alchemist?
I have not. I've read snippets and pieces of it, but I have not read it cover to cover.
So it was this one part that's so relevant to what you're talking about. So the main character is this boy named Santiago, and he's in the desert at this point, and they're trying to travel to the pyramids of Egypt. So they're riding these camels. And one of these OGs is talking to him, and he was basically like, yo, you see that camel up there? Like, as much as he travels, as much as the scenery around the camel changes, the only thing that the camel is ever focused on is the carrot that we put in front of it that keeps it walking forward, guiding it in the direction that we want it to go. But they're constantly missing all the beautiful scenery every single day because the only thing that they're looking at is the carrot. And as you were speaking about your story, when you're like, I'm just results focused and I'm just doing everything myself and I'm just focused on work and career and everything, it's like you said, these are my best years and I'm missing some of the dopest scenery and all that, just driving. I think you might find a lot of inspiration in that book. It's probably one of the most life-changing books I've
heard. That's why I started to read it, and I have not finished, because I started to read it in a digital format, which is the thing too. I don't do well with finishing digital books.
Me either. I can't. I'm surprised you even got snippets in it, man. Within 5 pages, I'm like, I can't. But it's funny though, because I can scroll social media. That's the weird.
Exactly. It don't make no sense. You just so used to on the screen just seeing bullshit that you like. I get
that is funny.
But right, so no, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah. And let's because I want to, man, the conversation is just flowing so effortlessly. But like you said, you got somebody there, and we're on a time crunch. I know you got other things that you have to do, but it's like I want to be able to talk about, some of your endeavors, so your coaching, you have an academy or something like that too, right? Or
yeah. So my coaching, I have a coaching program. It's an 8-week accelerator that I do with corporate managers or corporate professionals. It's called Building Brand Authority, short BBA. And pretty much within that, we work together one-on-one for 8 weeks to develop you into an expert within your industry. Not necessarily just developing that expertise, but more so amplifying and putting that expertise on a pedestal and highlighting it so that other people know about it too. Typically what I find, especially with corporate people, for instance, like me, right? Who you're killing it in all of these aspects, right? You may be killing it in your career, but for a lot of people, they don't know how to brand themselves and take that internal brand that they have of everybody at their company loving who they are and what they do, amplifying that to people outside of their company, because that's really where the real opportunity comes from. Of course, you can get a promotion from things like that within your company, but outside of it, you can increase your earning potential. You can get paid to speak on topics the same way that I do. So that is pretty much what I show people to do, is how do you use LinkedIn to position yourself as an authority so that you can increase that inbound opportunity, right? So you're not always going out applying to speaking engagements, trying to find clients. Those people will come to you. So we go through 8 weeks, one-on-one, like I said, on and off. If you are interested in learning more about what that program entails, just everything mapped out, lined out, you can go to my website at www.preciousprice.com/DBA.
Hey, that is lit. And how long have you been running this, or how long did you start the course? How long ago did you start the course?
So this is a brand new accelerator this year, actually. So the content and the frameworks that I've been using on my clients, I would say like the last 3 or 4 years, but this is an entirely new way that I'm presenting it. Typically, I just work kind of one-on-one on like a 4-week basis or just doing a one-off strategy call. But this is the first time that I'm actually having a comprehensive coaching program, and it's going the duration of an entire 8 weeks. But I feel like this is the best direction that it needs to take, because a lot more people are realizing just how, what's the word for it, comprehensive or extensive that like a branding process is. It's not just, okay, I'm gonna create an Instagram, I'm gonna do a new photo shoot, and then cool, I got a new brand, I just rebranded myself. Like,
hey, that's exactly the steps that people think it'd be, though.
That's what people do. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to just like uncover, is a rebrand, or just branding yourself in general is far more than just the aesthetics of it all. It's far more than the website. It's far more than the colors you choose, the logos. It's really about understanding your unique value, who your audience is, who best resonates with the story that you have, and then socially selling that to them, not necessarily doing a hard sales tactic. So that's what we cover.
Is this pre-recorded, or is this like where
it's live?
Every week y'all meet on Zoom? Oh, okay, that's lit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's live. It's live. We're kicking it off. Eventually, likely down the line, it will be pre-recorded and all of that. But for right now, this is actually one of my very first launches with it. So I do want to do it live, and I'm feeling like for the first, second, and at least the third, I am going to do it live, just so that I can get that live feedback from my clients. And then moving forward, it will turn into an evergreen program.
So talk to me about like the confidence of just like launching a product. And like you said, this is the first time I'm doing it. This is new, all this other stuff like that. But yet and still, you can still just move forward, press forward with just confidence. Like, so just talk to me about having confidence in pursuing whatever objective you're pursuing.
I feel like confidence comes from knowing. Right? I feel like the opposite of confidence is fear. In my mind, the opposite of confidence is fear. And typically you fear what you don't know. So in any situation, at least for me, I can only speak personally. Whenever I find myself not confident, I then need to I just need to know more. I find myself like researching, doing my Googles. Like if I'm going into something and I'm feeling like, okay, I'm about to go into maybe a networking dinner, and I'm not confident about this, I'm not confident about what I am about to do, typically what I do in that instance is I'll research the person. If I just know a little bit more about you, then that makes me a little bit more confident, because I'm not going into this blindsided. So when I say confidence, for me, it comes from every single thing that I do. It's not like this past weekend, I thought it up and now I'm like, cool, let's launch it, let's do it. I meditate on things a lot. I sit on things a lot. I research things a lot. You will find, for those that listen to this and you are in my circle and they know me, they know I don't get a lot of sleep. My mind runs constantly. So I'm up at any, given hour of the night doing research and doing work towards these programs and towards these things that I have. And the more that I know about it, the more hours that I put into it. For me, that is what makes me confident. But I can only speak personally and not for other people, right? But that's what makes me confident when I'm launching these products, is actually being able to say, like, I know this shit in and out like the back of my hand. You can't tell me that I don't know about my program, or you can't tell me like, okay, explain this, and then I'm stumbling over my words because I know this shit so well. So for me, that's where I get the confidence from. And that's what I would say to other people too, is like, if you're feeling not confident, figure out what more information can I acquire about this experience, about this situation. What else can I know? Because that confidence is going to come, like I said, from knowing.
No, that's brilliant. I was on one of my entrepreneurship calls this morning, and the guy who runs it, this guy named David Shands, he was talking to the CFO, and the CFO was telling him he should get a business plan. And he was like, yo, I don't need a business plan in modern day times. And he was like, well, we know you don't need a business plan. The important thing about a business plan, if you sit down with someone that's going to have you do it right, is it causes you to get smarter in your industry. It causes you really just to know the ins and outs of everything. So we're not going to use the business plan per se, but it's just going to increase your level of intelligence in that particular industry, in that particular area. So as you were saying that, that's what came to my mind. Like, you're so right. Like, when people are nervous or apprehensive to start something, it's because you don't know enough.
Exactly.
And even when you think you know a lot, typically that's just be our intellectual ignorance, or our disabling ignorance, as Warren Buffett will call it. Like, intellectual arrogance, where we think we know something, and therefore it blinds us to everything else that we really need to know, because again, we think we know it all already. So I commend you on that, the fact that, all right, well, let me make sure I know this in and out. So I'm assuming you rehearse any type of question that somebody might have, or objection, try to see it from every angle.
I mean, so the thing is, I think through all of those things, right? As far as objections, like a potential objection or questions, I do anticipate those, right? But as far as rehearse, I wouldn't necessarily say that, because as you can tell, I now, and this is years in the making, but I'm very comfortable speaking. You can ask me about anything. Typically, even when I'm doing keynotes and I'm doing workshops, I don't rehearse, because I know my content. And if I know it, then it's just going to be a conversation. So like I said, I anticipate the objections. I anticipate the questions and all of that. But I just know, like, I know the answer, and how the answer comes out is then up to me.
Yeah, I love your energy. What up, cuz? Yeah, I love your energy. My cousin just got to my crib too. Man, because he actually went to IU too, but it was way before though. Well, I don't know, cuz when'd you go to IU? You definitely younger than me. 2011 to what? 17. Oh man, you definitely know. All right, so as soon as I pause this, y'all probably know each other. So I definitely want to commend you on everything that you got going on. So let's talk about this podcast real quick. So you said y'all do seasons. What kind of motivated the podcast? What inspired it? And then, just kind of tell me like what the podcast is like.
So what motivated, I created the podcast, and I actually started it like maybe 3.5 years ago. I didn't publicize the episodes I had put out there, again, Imposter Syndrome, until about 1.5, 2 years later after that. Yes.
Really? So you were putting them out consistently, but you wasn't promoting them on your social media or nothing?
It wasn't consistent. I pretty much put out like 3 episodes initially, and then I'm like, nobody's going to want to listen to me. Like, nobody wants to hear this. But those are actually the 3 most popular episodes. So if you do actually go to my podcast and you'll see that there's like an unknown season that it starts or kicks off with. And those are the first couple of episodes that I uploaded before I then became the strategy behind branding yourself, and I started to put it out there for other people. But when I look at what motivated the podcast, it was primarily because a ton of people would set up time with me and ask the same question. They asking me the same thing. So I'm like, okay, I want to answer this in a podcast format, but not even just those questions. Prior to me getting and really becoming, I would say, an expert within this branding space, most of my speaking would be inspirational and motivational talks. It was not necessarily like on how do you brand yourself in a digital age. It wasn't a tactical type of topic. It was more so, how do you overcome adversity as, a Black woman, as a first generation college student? How do you, fix your attitude? Those types of talks was what I was doing. So back in, I believe it was 2016, I actually started a YouTube channel as well. And I have a YouTube, and I had this, what can I call it? Like an initiative that it was called 1 minute push. And in my mind, I said that, it should only really take you 1 minute to tell people who you are, what you do, and why you're dope. And that was kind of the beginning, or the fruition of, okay, we're really turning this into a real branding thing, like branding mixed with motivation. So all in all, I say all of that to say that is what you can find on the podcast. So not only do I interview like you're doing with your podcast in this format. I interview people who've pretty much done a really good job at creating a killer personal brand. So I interview them on how did they do that? What were the specific strategies and tactics? But then I also do many episodes with just myself where it's more of a training on branding, or it's just a motivational aspect of this is how you need to start thinking if you want to get to a certain level of success. You want to attain different things. Because I feel like it's a lot. It's not just the tips and the strategies and tactics and shit that you got to learn. I can give you all of the tips. I can give you all of the strategies. I can give you everything that I've read and looked at and watched and listened to get to the point that I am right now. But even if I give you all of that, if you're not the person right now who's ready to receive it, who's ready to actually act on it, then it means nothing. You're not going to do anything with that information. So that's why I couple the podcast with both mindset episodes as well as tactical strategic episodes. So that's what you can find.
That's definitely dope. And as you were talking, two different stories came to mind. So the first one is, have you ever heard of the power of positive thinking?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I have not.
So it's a book by Vincent Norman Vincent Peale. It was sold millions of copies. Well, actually, when Norman Vincent Peale was writing it, he was going through the imposter syndrome, kind of like what you're talking about with your podcast. So he actually threw it away. But his wife got it out the trash can and went and got it published. And that book sold millions of copies. And he threw it in the trash can because he didn't think it was good enough.
Exactly.
It was just ready to start all over. So that's what came to my mind as you were talking. And then that came at the beginning of the story. And then as you were finishing talking, the story of Jesus when he said, there is nothing wrong with my seed. It's really the soil. And what he was talking about is like, there's nothing wrong with my message. It's more so the consciousness of the person that I'm trying to get to receive it. So it doesn't, I could have the best seed in the world, but if the soil is that brown clay soil, and all that,
if it's tainted,
nothing is going to grow from it.
Exactly. I like that. But then, that's the message that I push to people, and they know, like many people who they listen to me consistently, right? Because I've been doing this shit consistently for years. And it's wild thinking about it, but I tell people all the time, like people ask me, like, what is the key to success? How did I get where I am? It's really intentionality, consistency, and patience. That's it. That's what I preach to people. That's what I tell to people all the time. Be intentional with your moves, be consistent with your actions, and be patient with the process. So at that point, that just intentionality, that consistency, and that patience all pretty much came together in a really good way to get me to where I am right now. Like it came together in a way that's really just showed me like, wow, you really, like, what is for you is going to be for you as long as you prepare yourself for it. That's
Facts.
it.
What is for you is going to be for you as long as you prepare yourself for it. Yo, you was dropping bars this whole podcast, man. Like, hey, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, to come on Rising Tide. Again, the purpose of Rising Tide is to educate, heal, and empower by bringing on the world's most brilliant minds and purest souls. She has definitely qualified herself as that. If y'all have been listening, she gave y'all a ton of free game throughout this whole podcast. So I'm extremely grateful. How can the people support you? How can the people find you and follow you? Just give them all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me everywhere at Precious C. Price. That is my handle on all platforms, and it is also my website URL, www.preciouscprice.com. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I would say that is one of the best ways to reach out to me, but if you want to keep up with my day-to-day endeavors, you want to see more about how I manage my career with my branding business, with my Airbnb business and my vending machine business, then all of that, you can see that on Instagram and follow
Man,
me.
what? See, you didn't even mention any of that, man. We're going to have a whole other podcast to talk about that. She said, yeah, if you want to know about my Airbnb business, my vending machine business, like that.
I do a lot. I warned you, I do a lot, but
And
I
you
love
25?
everything I do.
Jesus, you are out here.
But you see what I was talking about earlier, like you constantly just, So I've been, as of lately, I would say my main goal has been trying to just enjoy my 20s more. That is what's on the forefront right now, is like, sit back, you good, like nobody, like you don't have to live. Like I operate, and me and my friends talk about this, right? This is the last thing I will say. Me and my friends talk about this all of the time, because like I have a friend who's he's also from Chicago, and we're on the same thing. He's actually my business partner with the vending machines, but we still operate on a day-to-day as if we are struggling, right? As if we are in Chicago, like somebody about to take away this money that we got, or I gotta keep on hustling for more. I gotta do more. I gotta be more, when we're good already. Like I'm at the point with the investments that I have, with where I am, with everything that I'm doing, like I could take a really big L and I will still be good. But in my mind, I still feel like, well, dang, like, how can I explain this, right? It's like when you used to be young and your mom made you sit at the table all night until you ate the rest of your food. So now as an adult, I can't leave food on my plate like that. Those types of pieces where it's like I find myself still operating as if I'm in a struggle phase. Like, damn, I can't spend too much money. I shouldn't treat myself that much, because you never know where it's going to go, when I'm going to have to, So that's where I'm at, is really just trying to focus more on stop operating as if I'm still struggling, because I'm not. I've worked very hard over the last few years to get to where I am. And I've secured myself enough to know that it's not going nowhere, at least not right now, at my own fault. So I need to enjoy my 20s. Like, you're not going to get these years back. You're not at all.
Sheesh, yeah, you are definitely out here. So one last question to lead the people with: being an entrepreneur, achieving everything that you've achieved so far, what is one thing that you know now that had you would have known at the start of your journey, it would have streamlined your process or made things smoother for you?
You're good enough now. You are good enough now. I think back to everything that I waited to launch, all the shit that I waited to publish, that I waited to tell people about, that I thought that, okay, I'm not going to do it just yet because I need to do a little more. I need to know somebody else. I need to get another degree. Understand that even right now, without all of those things, you are still good enough for whatever it is that you want. Again, it's just about having that mindset and preparing yourself to receive it. But don't necessarily think that there's so much further that you have to go. Typically, it's a lot shorter than what you think.
Facts. And I definitely just want to encourage you to, every now and then to just stop and just look back to see how far you've traveled. A lot of times we just be laser focused on how far we still got to go. So, it kind of depreciates or devalues how far we've actually traveled. You might be on a course, trying to go a full marathon or something, but that mile that you've already ran, well, in your case, that 25 miles you've already ran, you got a mile to go. You've been going crazy, but it's like that 25 miles that you've already ran. It's like, man, you did a lot of stuff. And anybody who is endeavoring to just get in the race will look at you and be like, man, you are inspiration. Even though you might look at it as like, I'm not doing enough. But from the outside looking in, you are on fire. So I just want to give you your flowers while you can smell them. I definitely appreciate you again coming on the podcast, Rising Tide. And until next time.